I'm Emma Parkhouse. Thank you all for joining today. I'm the Director of Donor Relations here at All Hands and Hearts, and I'm going to be hosting the webinar. So in today's session, you're going to meet our new CEO, Nate Mook, and hear all about the incredible work that we've tackled over the last 6 months and then what we have in store for the rest of 2025. So joining us today as well as Nicolette Coman, our Chief Engagement Officer. So she'll also be taking part as a speaker for today's webinar. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping though before we hand over. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to enter them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And then all attendees have the ability to upvote using the thumbs up icon. So if there's a question that you'd like to, similar to one that you've already got, then feel free to go and hit that. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll aim to answer at least 3 of the popular questions. And then if we can't answer your question in today's session, we'll send a reply to you using the email address that you signed up with. And we'll hope to do that within a couple of days. So thank you again. And it's my pleasure to welcome Nicolette Coman.
Thank you so much, Emma, for the warm introduction. I'm super excited to be here with all of you today. As Emma said, my name is Nicolette. I am in charge of both the marketing team and the development team here at All Hands and Hearts. Been with the organization for next month, 10 years, so quite a while here. And I'm really excited on behalf of the entire organization to give a warm welcome to our new CEO, Nate. So Nate, I know that you have an amazing story of all the work that you have been doing in previous years across the globe, and that we have crossed path, All Hands and Hearts and yourself in the past. Maybe you can introduce yourself and explain us a little bit where we encountered.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Nico, and thank you, Emma, for hosting today. It's truly an honor to be here and representing All Hands and Hearts as the new CEO. I'm super excited and looking forward to our discussion today and hopefully many more in the coming months and years ahead. So yeah, I crossed paths with All Hands and Hearts many years ago. I actually got to know Petra Nemcova, the co-founder of All Hands and Hearts, down in Haiti shortly after the big earthquake. Petra's Happy Hearts Fund was down there working on schools, and I was down there with Chef Jose Andres as in the pre-World Central Kitchen days, when the organization was just sort of getting going, and we were down there looking at ways to support the community, as was Petra. And so I knew about Petra's work and the incredible work she was doing on schools and education, and followed that work over the years. And as we built World Central Kitchen and World Central Kitchen, starting in 2017, got into disaster relief work, our work and the work of All Hands and Hearts really started to overlap. So in many places around the world, in Indonesia, in the Bahamas, in Puerto Rico, I've had the great pleasure over the years to work very closely with the Purple Shirts, the All Hands and Hearts volunteers, the amazing volunteers that All Hands and Hearts brings to support communities. And my World Central Kitchen teams have worked with them over the years within the kitchens when we were producing meals or we were delivering meals. And so it's really wonderful now to be working even more closely alongside Petra and the All Hands and Hearts team as we look to the future and to be ready to respond to the many challenges ahead.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nate. Maybe people will remember that in December of 2024, All Hands and Hearts commemorated the 20th anniversary of the Indian Ocean tsunami that basically led to the founding of what today is known as All Hands and Hearts. Basically, this year we're reflecting upon 20 years of disaster relief across the globe. And basically, we wanted to briefly introduce to you the work that we have been capable of doing, all of us together, for those 2 decades that we have currently been active. I really want to emphasize here the word together, because one person alone can only do so much, right? And here we see a beautiful platform in which we count on the support of many people across the globe. We're talking about the communities that have been impacted. We're talking about local volunteers, international volunteers, partner organizations, donors, the All Hands and Hearts staff family, basically. When we all join forces, together we are able to make an incredible impact across the globe. And basically these numbers that we're showing here to you here today basically speak for themselves. No, really, we're talking about homes where we have been working, well over 205,000 homes that we have been able to provide support to in the aftermath of a disaster. We're talking about cleaning up, about mucking and gutting, about sanitization, etc., to make sure that people can go back into their homes. Also schools, what Nate was just mentioning in the introduction, we literally celebrated another school handover just literally last week. So that was a really beautiful accomplishment. Today, we count with 365 schools across the globe that we have been able to support because we recognize that the schools really have a community function, right? Once we provide a safe and resilient place for kids to go back to school, back to class, basically the parents and the other community members, they have their hands free to restore their lives and get back up on their feet. These all amazing accomplishments could not have been possible without you. Whether you have supported us in the past or you're attending this webinar today to learn about what we can do together, we extend to you an invitation to listen through these beautiful stories. And afterwards, we would love to hear from you and see how we can team up and make a bigger impact, all of us together. If we go to the next slide, Emma, I would like to introduce a picture that is a devastating picture, right? It gets right to our hearts. And I want to... people may have on top of mind the Los Angeles wildfires, basically when the year barely had started. And Nate, I would like to extend to you the invitation to share a little bit of your stories, because you were there, one of the first people to arrive in the name of the organization in early January. But I know that you also just came back literally last evening. Could you share with us a little bit of your personal experience? What did you see on the ground in those early days after the disaster, and how do you find the communities today?
Yeah, thanks, Nico. Yeah, I just got back this morning from Los Angeles, where I was meeting with our teams and partners on the ground. And, we're now 2 months after the huge wildfires hit in both the Pasadena, Altadena area and the Palisades. And there's been a lot of support, an outpouring of support from Los Angeles and the communities. And now sort of the next phase of the response is starting to happen. But the needs are massive. So one of the things that we are working on now at All Hands and Hearts is something called smoke remediation. So there are a lot of homes, as you've seen, like this image, that burned to the ground. But there were a lot of homes that also survived, or that were nearby, or the smoke, with all of the embers from the fires and the winds that were going 100 miles an hour, it was taking all of this stuff very, very far distances. And so a lot of homes may not have burned, but they were heavily impacted by the smoke and the ash. And you can see this when you walk into apartments that look otherwise fine on the outside. You can see this layer of what looks like dust on sort of first look, but you start to look closer and you realize it's ash from the smoke and from the fires. And this is very, very complicated, because when a home burns down, everything that was in that home is then obviously sort of turns into little particles and like flies out into the air. And so this can include a lot of hazardous materials, right? This could include lead. If a home is older and might have asbestos insulation, for example, there could be asbestos, there could be other things that are in this ash that ends up in people's homes. And so there are many people, even if their home wasn't directly damaged by the fire, had to evacuate and have not been able to go home for 2 months already. Many of these people are renting, right? So they may not even own their home, so they can't even sort of solve the problem themselves. They have to wait for their landlord, and their landlord may not have the money, or it may not be able to support, or may not want to support for whatever reason. So it's a big, big challenge. I mean, many, many thousands of people are still not able to go back home. And so what we're able to do is, the first thing we do is we go in and test. We need to make sure that the ash that is in the home does not contain asbestos or lead or toxic materials that then would require a much sort of more deeper effort to remediate. But thankfully, so far in all of the homes that we've tested, there has not been these toxic materials that would require much more of a deep sort of effort to remediate. So that means our teams, in partnership with, we built together this amazing coalition, a local Pasadena, Altadena based group called Fire Poppy, that just mobilized after the fires to help out, especially low income renters, alongside our partners CORE. CORE is an LA, Los Angeles based nonprofit who I've had the great opportunity to work with over many, many years, actually beginning in Haiti long ago and in more recent disasters. So we've been working very closely with CORE and another group called Endelon. And we've been able to train up remediators and also our own All Hands on Heart staff and volunteers to go into these homes and to clean them. And this requires, we have to get everything out. We have to get people's belongings out. We have to look at what can be saved, what's too damaged from the smoke that we need to just get rid of, what can be cleaned. It's a very long and complicated process, but tremendously important. And so yesterday I was actually at the home of a family and we met with a mother named Gidget. She has 3 kids and her husband and 2 cats. And as the fire was going, they were watching the embers start to fly and land near their house, and they could see the fire in the distance. The power went out, and she told her husband, like, we need to get out of here. So they grabbed what they could, which wasn't very much. They got in the car, they grabbed their 2 cats, and they were able to get out. They ended up eventually in a hotel. They've now been staying in this hotel for the last 2 months. The government has been able to support many families paying for their hotel rooms because obviously it would be very, very expensive. And but that's running out. They keep telling them like, oh, you might have to leave next week. And they're like, where do we go? What do we do? And they've been extending it a little bit, but basically they're running out of time. And so we were working very quickly to help Gidget clean up her home. And so we were in there yesterday. The goal is to finish by the end of this week. It requires getting everything out of there, packed up, all of the things, clean the walls, the floors, the HVAC, the heating and air conditioning systems. I mean, it's a very, very intensive process to make the home safe. Gidget has a 2-year-old, a toddler, and she said, I can't go back home because my 2-year-old will put things in his mouth, right? That's what toddlers do. And so if you can't be sure that somewhere is clean, and some families have been resorting to just trying to clean things up themselves, which obviously is not ideal. So we are really trying to expand this work to do this smoke remediation because in many ways it's the most critical piece right now, just to get people to be able to go back to their homes. Now, eventually we're going to get into looking at this photo, for example, the debris removal, needing to go in and remove debris. The EPA has been going in and testing sites and seeing if they are safe. And if they are, then it starts to open the door for some of this debris removal and then eventually to rebuilding. But this is going to be a very long process. And so for us, step one, if we can work with the community very closely and get people back in their homes, that's one of the most important things that we can do. But it's very, very hard on families. I mean, I'll give you an example. Talking to Gidget yesterday, I mean, she worked from home. She had a home office after COVID. She worked on her computer in her home office. She hasn't been able to work in her home office, right, for the last 2 months. So she hasn't been able to really work. They were put up in a hotel in Los Angeles about 45 minutes away from their home. But her son, who's a junior in high school, has to go to the high school every day. So she has to commute and drive him into work every single day, also making it almost impossible for her to be able to work herself. Her daughter, who's a freshman in college, has lost has been able to go to her home, hasn't been able, and has been suffering from mental health challenges, from PTSD from the fire and displacement, and so has now taken time off of school because she just there's just so much right now to deal with, and also having to take care of the family and the 2-year-old. And so you see that as you talk to these families and you hear these stories, I mean, first of all, it's amazing. I mean, we see this all over over the United States and all over the world, the resilience of people, right, in the hardest of times, and yet they're still persevering and going through. But you also see the impact is far beyond what we would think, right? When we think of a fire, we think of somebody's home being damaged and, insurance and this and that, but, it has all of this domino of effect. And that's why, for us, it's a really important thing to be able to come in and help the community. Yesterday afternoon, we went to visit the apartment of a woman named Marguerite and her friend Gloria. And Marguerite's in her 80s, and she lives in an apartment building. We're literally across the street, 100 feet away, everything burned down and burned out cars and burned out homes. And thankfully, the building they're in is a bit newer, didn't catch fire, but her window and everything is facing where the fire was in Altadena. And so we were able to go and remediate, working with CORE and Fire Poppy and Endelon. We were able to help remediate her home. We took all of her clothes and all of her bedding. We got it all professionally cleaned. And we were also able, with partners, to get her a new bed too, because the mattress was completely smoke filled. Some of these items you just can't. So we were able to get her a mattress. And yesterday she moved back into her house, and she was so happy and so grateful for the work that both All Hands and Hearts and our partners were doing. And so, again, you see the real direct impact of the work and the importance of the work. And there's still so much more to be done in California. Like I said, 2 months into this major, major disaster, and the needs are going to continue. And so we need to keep awareness up. We need to keep funding up, because this is a big challenge right now, right? With so many disasters, a lot of support floods in those early days and, can be overwhelming. But now there just isn't that support anymore. And that's why, All Hands and Hearts remaining there in the community and our volunteers coming in are so critical. We're hearing from a lot of organizations now that the volunteer support has really dropped off, because there was a big flood, of course, of local volunteers, people coming in to help in the immediate aftermath. But now nobody shows up. And so where we can come in and say, hey, you need 4 volunteers to run your distribution center, great. We will be there. We'll have our team there. We're reliable. The volunteers that we work with are incredible. And, it's a lifesaver to these folks that are serving their community. So I'll stop there. So much I could talk about LA for ages, but it just, I hope it gives you a sense of really the importance of the work and what we're doing on the ground right now in Los Angeles.
Thank you so much for sharing these stories with us, Nate. I think it is really incredible to understand the human stories behind this. Now, what this disaster truly has in terms of impact on their day-to-day lives, how it is completely turned upside down. Basically, also reiterating to this audience is that All Hands and Hearts is always there in the early days after a disaster happens, and we commit to stay, even when media attention fades, when people go back to normalcy, because we recognize that the needs continue to exist and continue to evolve. The needs that existed a month ago look completely different than what you're currently describing, and also in 6 or 8 or 12 months from now, it will again look very different. Before we move on to the next story, just a really small anecdote is that people may recall the Hawaii wildfires that happened 18 months ago, and literally All Hands and Hearts is wrapping up that program 18 months after the events, and we've been continuing to support those communities and also in those final stages transferring knowledge to grassroots organizations to ensure that they can cope with the later stages but really recognizing that impact that we have been able to make for 18 months in people's lives has only been able due to the support of so many partner organizations, donors, volunteers, everybody making that long-term commitments. We want to go to the next story, Nate, because I also know that beyond your travels to Los Angeles, you were recently, together with our board of directors in North Carolina, we go a little bit further back in time, 6 months ago, devastating hurricanes, one after the other, first Helene and then Milton, that hit east coast of the United States. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you have been doing there together with the board of directors? And just as a teaser for our audience, we will have a small clip from a dear friend of yours.
Yeah, no, I shortly before I went out to LA, I was down in North Carolina, in Western North Carolina, in the Asheville area that was hit so hard by Hurricane Helene. And of course, the All Hands and Hearts team was on the ground, the day after and has been supporting ever since. And we've had tremendous volunteers come through. I mean, the impact has been massive already. I mean, we've worked on over 256 homes right now. We've had over 1,000 volunteers that have come through our North Carolina program, helping out the community. And this is just, so critical, because again, as time goes on and we have more disasters and other things, it's very easy for communities to feel forgotten. And to me, one of the most striking things about what happened with Helene in North Carolina is you have all of these communities that are isolated and that are sort of up in the mountains in these small little towns. And 6 months later, it looks like the disaster could have happened a week ago. We were up in a town called Marshall, where it's just about 20-30 minutes north of Asheville. And Marshall is this beautiful town right on the river and has this amazing artist community. And they do an artist festival every year that brings in people from the area and far beyond, and just an amazing place that you can see. But as you drive in, it looks like the hurricane just hit. I mean, there are crushed cars and the buildings are collapsed in certain areas. And, the amount of devastation is still massive. And, talking to the residents there and talking to the community, they said, we just haven't gotten the help that we need. Very few folks have come in. And so that's where, we've been able, as All Hands and Hearts, to be able to really focus our energy and attention and be able to make sure that even when the cameras are gone and even when the volunteers are no longer showing up, at the sheer numbers they were before, we're able to tap into our amazing All Hands and Hearts community. We're able to keep those volunteers working, our own staff as well, our trained staff and professionals that are there, working on all sorts of things. And so, in Marshall, for example, working on, it was a high school there that had 11 feet of water, probably about 5 feet of mud that was from the river that filled up. I mean, you could see these massive trees that just got uprooted and ripped out. And so we were in there basically, getting out the mud, cleaning out this high school that also serves as artist studios, and where they host this big festival. And so again, to get the community back up and running, to get things going, so much work is required. And, unfortunately, a lot of these areas still need a lot of help. And so, as you said, Nico, we get there early, and it's very important that we stay as long as we're needed and as much as possible transition to what the local community can do. But in a place like Western North Carolina that had so much impact from Helene, and I'm sure all of you saw the devastating footage and the mudslides and the flooding and things, these towns that were really hit badly. It's going to take a while. And so we're going to be there through the end of this year, likely into next year, as long as we can to support. And so, again, it's so critical also for donors to remain engaged, because, again, if everybody moves on and there's another new disaster and we sort of forget about a place, these communities can feel forgotten. And so, we're trying to be a conduit. And so we had an amazing opportunity. A good friend of All Hands and Hearts and Petra, Stephanie Rule, who is at MSNBC. Many of you will recognize her. She was able to come down with her son to come volunteer and to see the situation. And she was also just, kind of in shock that, 6 months later, this is the state of things, and that so much work is needed. We've gotten a lot done, as I said, and we've helped out as an independent, privately funded NGO. We've been able to do a good amount of work, an incredible amount of work, with the support of our donors and volunteers and staff. But of course, just the need is so big. So yeah, so I think we've got a quick clip. It's just
Let's have a look.
2 minutes, and yeah, take a look.
The last thing before we go tonight, over the weekend, I spent some time in the Asheville, North Carolina region. The area is still suffering from the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, which ripped through parts of the state nearly 6 months ago. These areas were always tucked away mountain and river communities, but now locals there feel completely lost and forgotten. I wanted to share just some of what I saw on the ground. So we are here in Marshall, which is a small mountain town, kind of an artist community, just outside Asheville. And you would have thought that the hurricane hit a week ago. I mean, huge portions of it are still just uninhabitable. Because we're in a river community, storms hit different in a river area where the water just rises and then sits. This whole area, houses that weren't wiped out by wind or rain, they were just filled with mud, some for weeks, if not months, and they're only digging out through the mud now. I mean, all of this was basically wiped out by landslides. Like, you forget in areas like this that are so wooded, the mud was just devastating. They've had to spend a huge amount of time just getting to people whose homes have been compromised, who are living in their homes just filled with mud and wreckage, to try to come in and start to salvage them. And many, many people we've met have said they didn't hear from the government, and the government hasn't spoken to them, but it's volunteer organizations that have come in and helped. This bridge, it's taken about 6 months for them to cobble it back together and make it usable, so it has been so difficult. And this all over. So there are a lot of aid groups here, like All Hands and Hearts, doing work, volunteer work every day to try to help people rebuild from this hurricane. Now it's 6 months old. We're coming off one of the coldest winters they've had, and some areas have finally gotten their water, their electricity back, and there's a lot of concern that federal funding is going to be cut off for some of these volunteer groups. Even if they don't get federal money, they get money from groups like the Red Cross. And while we don't know what's to come, I do know there are still a lot of people here who need a lot of help. We always say it on this show, if you need help, ask for it, but if you can give help, please give it. If you'd like to volunteer or donate to help those still struggling in these communities, visit allhandsandhearts.org. I promise the money will go to good use.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your firsthand experience there, Nate, and working alongside our board there to see the need firsthand. I think that is crucial, and it all makes us even more committed to work that extra hour, go that extra mile, because we know that we can directly make an impact in people's lives. For the last story, I would like to invite the audience to travel the globe to see another part of the work that All Hands and Hearts does. And basically, I'm referring to our Nepal earthquake relief program, because what I want to introduce to this audience is the fact that in the month of April, it will be a decade after the devastating earthquakes. Basically, what we see in countries such as Nepal, also in Mexico, also in Philippines, other countries where we have worked across the globe, by now 28 in total over that time frame of 2 decades. Basically, what we see is that when a major event hits, we see heavily impact in the educational infrastructure. For example, in the case of Nepal, we saw well over 8,000 schools that basically were destroyed that very day. In a matter of seconds, basically, people's lives are turned completely upside down. And I think for us, myself as a mom, I think I was closest to experiencing a similar situation of what that means if your children don't have a place to go and to study and in a school when it was COVID time. But basically what these communities face is having their children every single day either at home or in very unsafe temporary shelters to study as best as they can. So basically, with All Hands and Hearts, ever since we started, we have made that commitment towards these communities to support them in the aftermath. We know that in these countries, when we see such a massive impact, the government's support systems are completely overwhelmed, right? We cannot address the need of rebuilding 8,000 schools all at once. So basically, a decade afterwards, we continue to see schools in need. Currently, we are building our 28th school there in Nepal, and we're thrilled. Nepal for us is a place that is close to our heart in terms of in terms of donors, in terms of volunteers, of staff members that go there over and over again and really make sure that these communities, little by little, one by one at a time, can go back to normal. We have been working there ever since those very, very early days, 72 hours after the earthquake, and then still making a true difference there every single day. This counts not only for Nepal, also for other places across the globe. For example, in Mexico, where we recently celebrated in December our school opening, and where we will soon start a new project in the month of May. Visit our website if you would like to sign up or participate through a donation if time doesn't allow you. And also last week, we recently opened another school there as well in the Philippines. So a lot of hard work is going on across the globe, and we will continue to make an impact in people's lives. How do we do that? Maybe Emma, you can join us towards the next slide. This we can only do it when we connect all of us together. No, we start basically within the community. We truly listen to the community's needs. We'll make them take the lead over their own recovery process. Every country, every community where we work, whether that is domestically on the US side or on the international side, all the needs are different, and we are there to walk with them throughout the process towards recovery and share our skills, our knowledge, our network of supporters, our network of volunteers. As you can see here, it takes so many of us to walk the walk of towards recovery. So we're very, very thankful for people attending today, and also extending that invitation to join us along in the future. I think right now, Emma, do we have a couple of questions?
Yeah, and to make it fair, Avi asked his question first in the chat box, so I'd like to address his first. I think that would be nice. So Nate, how do you plan to further develop All Hands on Heart's unique value add compared to other disaster response orgs, e.g. Team Rubicon, CORE, etc.? And how do you plan to work collaboratively with these organizations on the ground when disaster hits?
Yeah, it's a important question. It's a great question. So I'll start with a first piece of that, which is that the needs are only getting bigger, right? We're seeing the scale of disasters grow, the frequency of the disasters grow. Whether that's the hurricanes, the wildfires that we're seeing multiple times a year. We've got an All Hands on Hearts team that's been in Kentucky responding to floods. It didn't even really make the news very much, but really devastated a small community in Kentucky. We've got a team now in Missouri responding to the tornadoes that just hit over the weekend. You probably saw the news about. And that's just domestically here in the United States, right? Compounded by things that are happening all across the world. And, some of this is driven directly by a changing climate. But in general, we need to be ready to respond faster and more frequently to bigger disasters. And that's going to take both scaling up the work that All Hands and Hearts does and can do to be ready. It also means that we can only do this working together. This is really, really important at the core of what we do, both with community and community-based organizations like we are across all of our programs right now. And I was mentioning a number of them in Los Angeles now that we're working with on the smoke remediation, for example, like Fire Poppy and Endelon. These are community-based organizations. We participate in the community gatherings and listen to the community of what they need and what are the different groups doing and how can we step in to support them, not come in from the outside with our own agenda, our own plans. We say, okay, what are the needs? What's happening now? How can we bring our resources and our experience to the table? And that means also partnering with a number of the larger nonprofits as well. I mentioned our good friends at CORE. We've been working together since the beginning of the wildfires with CORE. We have had the cash assistance program that we've been working with on them from the beginning to get cash into families, and now on smoke remediation, on working at the disaster resource centers to collect to do intake of individuals who need support and help. So so that's just a small example, but I think we have to be working together. We can't look at the work that we're doing as competitive, and we're all better when we work with each other. So we're constantly in touch with I'm talked to my former World Central Kitchen team. We talk to Team Rubicon, as you mentioned. We work with CORE. We work with a lot of others, and we complement each other, right? I think the work that All Hands on Hearts does and our experience is very different, right? From an organization like World Central Kitchen that goes in and is providing meals via food trucks, or if they set up a kitchen or something. So like in the LA wildfires, we've been working side by side. World Central Kitchen may have a local food truck there, and we're doing, supporting with distribution to the community or other services. And so again, I think that's the best way forward is collaboration, and we know the needs are bigger than our local governments can handle. So we just got to do what we can.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Nate. We've got a couple more, and I think we've still got a little bit of time. So Chris asks, how does All Hands on Hearts ensure that the community members are involved in the planning and decision-making process for disaster relief efforts?
Yeah, so one of the first things that we do when we arrive post-disaster is we engage with the local community, and we do that in a number of ways. So we're engaging with the local government. If they have, depending on the scale of the disaster, there may be what's called an emergency operations center, an emergency management team that's sort of overseeing, and that could be state level, municipality level, all the way down to the local level. So, for example, in Kentucky, after the floods, we worked with community members on the ground to identify the areas that were hit the hardest. We got in touch with the local mayor who knows the community of this small town that was impacted. And we said, how can we help? What do you need? Not coming in to tell others what to do, or we say, here's what we can do. But okay, what are the needs now? Where can we make your life easier and help you out right now? So that's the first step, is just really connecting in immediately with the local community. And those that are sort of helping to oversee the response, to make sure we're coordinated, we're not just coming in and doing our own thing. And then the second piece is learning from the community. So as we get situated, we talk to people, we listen. If we're setting up a location, we're working with local partners to set up a volunteer base, like in North Carolina, where volunteers can come in and stay. And in partnership with that, we're getting to know the local community. What are the needs? And we set up, we actually have scouting teams that also go out and say, what are the, kind of going out and doing assessments and talking to the community, what's needed. And we set up a hotline where people can call us and say, hey, we need the help, we need this, we need that. So again, we're collecting all of these needs, and then we're able to really tailor a response for the community. The other piece is getting the local volunteers involved, which is really important as well. So yes, we do have volunteers that come in and travel in from the outside, but also getting local volunteers, right? It's their community that's impacted, getting them involved so they can do the work. And then also hiring up locally, right? So right now in Florida, we've been working on rebuilding homes after Hurricane Milton hit, and before that, Hurricane Ian. So we've been working in Florida, pretty much nonstop for the last 3 years almost. And this is really important work, but it also requires us to hire locally, which I think is really important, because we keep money back in the community. We're hiring local experts in things like, fixing up the homes, or plumbers, or different types of contractors, different things, as we're getting people back in. And so that's the other piece as well, is making sure that we're also trying to support the local economy in the process. So I hope that gives you, a sense, but it's such an important question, because it all has to start there. It has to start locally, and it's about the community. And All Hands on Hearts now has had 70,000 volunteers come through our programs over the last 20 years. And so we also have this really deep network all around the world, which is so amazing, because when there is a disaster, we can then reach out to that alumni network, and they know their communities, or they know somebody, and that's how we get sort of connected in.
Global change makers. Emma, I believe in order to respect everybody's time, we have time for one and last question. So for other people to know, if you put your question in the Q&A box, thank you so much. I think they're all thoughtful, really meaningful questions. We will follow up with those that we cannot address in this session via email.
Thanks, Nicola. Okay, so the last question for you, Nate, starts with a congratulations as well. This is from Vlas Sharubko from Power Niue. So congratulations to Nate on becoming CEO, an excellent choice for All Hands on Hearts. Having had the chance to meet Nate personally, I've seen his dedication to impactful humanitarian work. Given his experience, do you see any opportunities for future projects in Ukraine? Additionally, would All Hands on Hearts be open to exploring partnerships with local organizations to maximize impact?
So we'll start with the question on the local organizations, because it tails onto what I said before, 100%. So we are doing this in Los Angeles, we're doing this in North Carolina. where there are local nonprofits like yours that are doing incredible work on the ground, where we don't want to come in and reinvent the wheel. If we can come in and partner with you, be supportive, bring resources, maybe raise funding and support your work, that's the best case scenario, right? That's amazing. Ukraine, as you may know, I've spent the last couple of years focused on Ukraine. I fell in love with the country and the amazing people that are continuing their fight for freedom and democracy. And it is one of the most important things, I think, right now. And 3 years into the full-scale invasion, there is still a lot of need. Governments have come in, the US government, the European governments have put in a lot of support, but NGOs really have a role to play too. So, All Hands on Hearts actually did play a big role in Ukraine at the beginning of the war. It worked both in Poland on the border, helping build shelter and support refugees from Ukraine. Petra was able to get evacuation vehicles in very early on. And I saw this work when I was in Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine of evacuating children out of eastern Ukraine. You may think, well, how does that relate? Well, it's sometimes you have to adjust and adapt to the needs. And this was the biggest need right now. Kids, yes, we could say they need to go to school, they need an education, but the first step was to get them out of harm's way, right? And so we were able to work and partner with organizations that were working with children and working on education to provide these services. And All Hands on Hearts partnered with an organization called Save Ukraine. Save Ukraine is a local Ukrainian NGO that's been rescuing kids and also providing services and education to kids that are traumatized and impacted by the war. So a lot over the last few years has been done by All Hands on Hearts. And I would love to explore how we can continue to support Ukraine. One of the biggest challenges over a period of time is how you can raise the funding to continue to do that work. And this is a big issue sort of across the board with all types of disasters, right? Where when you're a privately funded organization like All Hands on Hearts, we don't take government money, we don't have USAID funding and other funding that has sustained us. So in some ways that's good, because with what's happening now and the challenges now politically in the United States, it's really created a big issue for a lot of great NGOs that are doing great work. And so we're not affected by that directly, although a lot of our friends and peers are. But it also means that, we can sort of only do so much, right, ourselves. And so a lot of the work that we were doing in Ukraine, especially the first couple of years, we've then passed that on to organizations we were partnered with. And folks like Save Ukraine are still working hard and operating, of course, every day. So we're always open to explore, especially where there's still need, and to bring our ability to support. And so short answer is yes, we're always looking at the landscape of need and would love to find ways to collaborate. Rebuilding schools is going to be an important thing to happen in Ukraine at a certain stage, right? And fixing up schools, right, in some of the areas that have been heavily occupied or damaged by the attacks. And so, we'd love to find ways to partner together and look at opportunities to support schools in Ukraine, for example. So that will definitely be something that's on the agenda, and we'll look at opportunities there. But this is what we do. We're willing to work everywhere. All Hands on Hearts has been all over the world over the last 20 years, and will continue to be engaged both in that immediate kind of emergency disaster response phase, and also in the much longer term recovery, as long as we can. And so if you identify opportunities, or there are things that you think we can do to partner together, would encourage you to reach out. And while I can't promise we can do everything right now, and of course there's limited amounts of support to be able to draw down in difficult times, but we will do our best. And we love the dialogue, and we want to be open and transparent. Those of you that know me, you can always reach out to me directly, and would love to have a conversation and talk about the situations.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nate. I really appreciate it. And I really want to wrap up with a thank you slide with our contact details, so you can reach out to our team. And I just wanted to provide a little bit of context behind the picture, the Be Kind. What I really personally love whenever I go to projects, there's teeny tiny details of love and care hidden everywhere. So for example, these shoes, I found them somewhere in a box where people leave items for new volunteers whenever they come, and people like to leave messages of inspiration. And I think like Be Kind these days goes a long way, right? So I want to wrap up basically this session. I want to thank everybody who has joined us today. We are also sharing the recording later on with those who were unable to attend. If you have any questions, any ideas, please do reach out to us. Follow us on social media, share the content, because every one of us, we have the power to spread the word, to be an All Hands and Hearts ambassador, to basically join us on this mission to support communities that tend to be forgotten, but together we can really advocate for them. No? So I hope you all have a really beautiful rest of your day, whether that is already the late afternoon for those who are on the eastern side of the world, or just as me, more on the western side, starting my day. But thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you, Nate, so much for all your answers, the thoughtful answers to all of our questions, and Emma for setting up and facilitating this entire session.